All right. So we're on page 69 of the Peace Pilgrim book. And we're looking at solving life's problems. The section we're talking about right now is on divine protection. And we've read a few things in her book about where God has clearly taken care of her. And it's not so different than the Divine Mother, where God just has stepped in, and because of their gosh, in both those stories, it's the same thing. With Holy Mother, it's just her own purity and her own trust and her own faith that made her uh, be accepted as the daughter of those dacoits, like a daughter, where they didn't attack her or hurt her or rob her or anything, but took care of her. And then we read that same story about that truck driver who picked up Peace Pilgrim. And because she got in the truck so trusting and sat down so at ease and leaned her head on his shoulder and fell instantly asleep, he said, with that kind of trust in me, I couldn't violate it. I couldn't violate that sweetness of that trust that she had in me. And so it really shows, that we do create our world, that we do create the world we're in. And that shouldn't be, you know, taken too far. That we say, oh, somebody gets in trouble, in their world, and we're like, oh, well, they created their world. Um, we do that, but that's not a just thing or a loving thing to say, and so that is its own violation. So we don't. That's not why we teach that. We teach that to to inspire purity and sweetness and love and trust in God, not to make a point that people who are suffering deserve it. So just to make that very clear, it's the same way with karma yoga, as you know, or karma. Karma is not given to us as an explanation of where we're at. That's not what we use it for. We use it for to realize that in the moment we are in charge of our destiny. That in this moment we can affect our tomorrows. And so karma is meant to empower us and not to make us a victim of karma, right? Because so many of us use it that way. It's like, oh, what to do? That's my karma. No, what to do? That's your karma is change. That's what it is. You're not at all a victim. Karma is not an explanation for your life. It's an indication to do better. And so you do better. You don't explain things. And you certainly, it's absolutely incorrect to ever talk about somebody else's karma aside from yours, because there is not any possibility that you can have even the slightest clue about someone else's karma, you know? And even karma, we shouldn't really even talk about karma, because basically we talk about karma like if someone gets the things that we want, they've got good karma. If they get the things that we don't want, they've got bad karma. you know, and that is so utterly wrong and will lead you so far astray. It's not even funny. And so don't use karma in that way, and don't use what we just talked about, this God protecting you because of your purity and your love in that way. But know that this experience is true for Divine Mother and for the Peace Pilgrim, and thereby, if it's done purely in the right way, it will be true for you as well. But that's never the point, right? It's never the point. She wasn't pure to get something from God. She was pure because of love, pure because of her discernment and her renunciation, right, on her path, and her dedication to her ideal. All right, so now she continues on here in this talking about life, solving life's problems. She says, there are many things we do not fully understand. We just know they happen. For instance, I have been kept from some things that could have hurt me. I was walking down a lane which I knew to be a small lane. The trees met overhead. I could not really see where I was going, but I knew this lane through prior experience, and I could see light at the end of the tunnel. Now I was walking very fast when something that I can only call a force stopped me. I mean, it was powerful enough to stop me. I started ahead very gingerly to see what in the world had happened, and there was a barbed wire stretched across the lane. They were repairing the cattle guard at the end of the lane which I did not know, and had stretched this wire across to keep the cattle from straying. I would have run into that wire if I had not been stopped. We have much more protection than we realize. The most significant thing of this kind happened when I was driving a car. I've given up my driver's license now, but all through my driving days, I was a good, stable driver, and the car was always under my control. This time I was driving somebody else's car over a road that was not yet finished. Coming down an incline, there was a traffic light at the end of the road where you had to turn either one way or the other. The cars were turning both ways and turning up on the road and turning up onto the road past me. I naturally put my foot on the brake when I saw the light was red, but I had no brakes. I grabbed for the emergency brake. I had no emergency brake. I thought if I could put the car into reverse, it would stop, although this would tear it to pieces. I attempted to get it into reverse, but it wouldn't go. Ahead of me, I saw a station wagon with two little children looking out of the back window. I had to stop the car. I couldn't turn to the left. There was a rock wall there, and the cars were coming up thick and fast. There was a rock wall to the right with a ditch, and my little finite mind said, "Take the ditch. Sideswipe the rock wall. It will stop the car. It will tear it up, but it will stop it." I was not able to do that. This was the only time in my life when a car was taken out of my control. The car turned to the left, went between two cars, and then went up a little dirt road on an incline, which of course stopped the car. I did not even know that the dirt road was there. I couldn't possibly see it. So you see, I've had such amazing things happen to me. You can understand why I feel full of absolute protection. That protection extends even to any group that I'm with. That's a fascinating thing because, I have had devotees tell me stories exactly like this one. One devotee told me that a car that she's sure she was there with her daughter, and a car was having an accident, I guess, and she swears the car hit her. And her daughter also swears the car hit her. And they both say that the car went through her legs. That it did she became permeable somehow, that the car did hit her, but went through her. They both saw it. They're afraid to believe it, because it happened in that moment of craziness. But both of them afterwards, she turned to her daughter and said, "Did you see that?" And her daughter said, "Yes, I think I saw that." Right? And so this notion that these things can happen. I heard a Swami story. I can't remember the Swami's name, so it's authentic from me. I can't remember his name, but he was saying, someone was telling me that he was got in a car accident and that the car lost control. And when the Swami lost control of the car, he took his hands off the steering wheel and put his feet up on the seat and sat in meditation. and the car just kind of went through the accident, but everybody came out okay at the end. It was kind of, he just surrendered. He was just like, well, I can't do anything. Just started meditating, preparing himself, for that end. And it didn't happen. There wasn't an end. So these things, we can do with them as you like. These are presented as things that have happened to devotees. And, here she will present several of them to us as having happened in her life. So you see, I've had amazing things happen to me. The protection extends to even the groups that I'm a part of. A helpful meditation for solving life's problems. I'd like to share this little meditation with you. First, could we agree that God's protection surrounds us? Know that you are God's beautiful child, always in God's hands. Accept God. Accept God's protection. There is really no problem to fear. Know that you are not the clay garment. Know that you are not the self-centered nature which governs your life needlessly. Know that you are the God-centered nature, the kingdom of God within, the indwelling Christ, eternal and indestructible. Identify with the real you, right? Peace be still and know that I am God. And then drop off that word. Peace be still and know that I am. Peace be still and know. Peace be still. Peace be. Peace, peace, peace. And now, with the knowledge that we are God's perfect children, eternal and indestructible, let us go our separate ways in love, but always remain together in spirit. God bless you, and peace to you all. Wow, beautiful. I thought that was the end of the oops. I thought that was the end of the book, and I was going to panic there for a slight second, thinking, oh, what are we going to do with the rest of the class now? First of all, I have to plug in my phone. It's dying. I don't know if that fixed it or not. All right. So, chapter 7, living the spiritual life. Anyone have any questions or any comments so far? What we've looked at? All right.
I think it's interesting that, yes, she was protected until she died from a car accident, in a car accident. Gets us in the end, doesn't it?
Well, God did that as well.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the fallacy in it. I mean, that's the fallacy is that, yes, God may save you. That's kind of what I told Swamiji, the Swami Prabhupada. There was a story again. I can't remember which direct disciple it was, who went to sleep under a tree while he was wandering as a monk, and in the middle of the night, some divine being comes and wakes him up. And when he wakes up to respond, a big branch breaks from the tree and falls right where he was laying. And then he's very excited. He's thrilled. Oh, look, God woke me up. And I turned to Swami Prabhupada when he was telling that story. I said, Maharaj, why didn't God just wait until the morning to break the branch?
Yeah.
And Swami Prabhupada just looked at me and smiled, and he said, but then his faith would not have grown in God's power to save him. So there are answers for all these things. But yes, God is the doer, so you can blame him for everything. You can blame him for not having killed you, and you can blame him for killing you. It's all going to happen. But it will always be for the cause of love. It will always be a positive challenge to what happens to you. All right, chapter 7, living the spiritual life. In the beginning, I undertook my walking not only to contact people, I undertook it as a prayer, a discipline to keep me concentrated on my prayer for peace. I hadn't learned yet to pray without ceasing. I also undertook a 45-day period of prayer and fasting as a prayer discipline. After the first few years, the prayer discipline was completely unnecessary because I had learned to pray without ceasing. I made the contact so thoroughly that into my prayer consciousness I put any condition or person in the world that I am concerned about, and the rest takes place automatically. Occasionally, some condition is brought back to my conscious mind because I need to really concentrate on it. If some person is in dire difficulty and that person returns to my mind for thought, I sometimes use the prayer of visualization, which has always been very natural for me. But I understand not so for everybody. I reach out, my divine nature reaches out, to contact their divine nature. Then I have the feeling of lifting them, lifting them, lifting them. And I have the feeling of bringing God's light to them. I try to envision them bathed in God's light. And finally, I do see them standing and reaching out their arms bathed in golden light. At that point, I leave them in God's hands. I was just talking with my friend James this morning, who came over. We had a great meditation time together, and we were talking about our little trip to the park yesterday. There was a little group of us that went to the park, and we wanted to basically make ourselves available to the beloved to use us in any way in the park, just to spread love. We didn't have an idea of it. We didn't know what we were going to do or how it was going to happen. But we sat in a circle, we meditated for 5 minutes, and we just stated our intention, that we're here to be the hand and arms of the beloved. And we all went out and just approached the park in that way. That was the only instruction. You were free to do as you like, but to approach and to try in every moment to be available for Mother to use you in any way. And we were just talking about there were so many things that happened. Nothing supernatural like that. Nothing outrageous, but such beautiful little things happened. Like two of the guys that went out. Well, James with his friend. They're older white men, which can be intimidating at times. Sorry, I'm letting somebody in here. And he says that they went over and they were just standing and watching these two Mexican families that were having a picnic out there, and the whole family was there. And he said that they were just they smiled at them and they invited them in. They played soccer with them for a while. They played with the kids. He said it was like we were part of the family. We were so thoroughly accepted. He said they had a little tiny kid, a 2-year-old that was sitting off to the side. And he said they even let us, he says, I went over and I was sitting right next to their child alone. And they didn't distrust me. They didn't distrust me. And of course, if you're a woman, I don't know if you know that feeling, but like men are not allowed to approach children. And so he was allowed, and he was talking about how thrilled he was by that, and he said, I was just amazed how differently I was approached and accepted by people in the park just because I was walking around thinking of loving them. He said he said it was a palpable difference in existence. And I think this is what the Peace Pilgrim is getting at here. It's like your consciousness about yourself makes a difference, regardless of whether you're actually showing it or doing it or presenting it. If you just have love in your heart and you're just walking around saying positive prayers for people as you pass them, and you're just being available to God to love, the experience of your life will change instantaneously, immediately. It's not even something you have to practice for it to have its effect. Just sit there, set your intention, and go out for a walk with the constant thought of love and praying for people as you pass them and as you see them on the street. Just positive prayers. It can be for anything, to fix their hair, to get new glasses. So it doesn't matter. Just love them, and this we were meant for this. This is what life was meant to be. We weren't supposed to be all wrapped up in doing what we need to do and getting what we need to get and going where we need to go. That's the ego's world. The heart's world is to be a lover amongst lovers, right? And to be committed to that ideal.
Swami, I want to make a comment. It's a
Please.
pray without ceasing is coming from the book, The Way of a Pilgrim, and the Pilgrim continues. He
Yes.
repeatedly mentions that pray without ceasing.
Well,
Pray.
he mentions it repeatedly because St. Paul gives that instruction in the New Testament.
I
Pray
think
without
so.
ceasing,
Yes,
right?
that's where I read in The Way of a Pilgrim and Pilgrim continues. It seems
Yeah.
she said, I had learned to pray without ceasing.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really nice. Yeah.
To have that constant prayer, that constant awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it goes two ways. One, you can practice doing mantra or practice God awareness and say that's praying without ceasing, and that is true. The other way is to be consciously aware that every thought and movement of your body is a prayer, always. And so everything you're doing all day long is a direct prayer to God. And that's why you get results for them. And because you're not focused in what you're doing all different kinds of things. That's why you don't ever get exactly what you prayed for, because it's an average of what you prayed for that you get, right? It's all of your prayers put together, and you get the result of all the prayers. And so God only says yes, but he says yes to the degree that you pray the prayer, right? And this is one of the reasons that we want to have single-minded thinking, where we can focus and concentrate so that we can know what our prayers are. And we can pray the prayers that we want to pray with a whole heart, with a whole attention, right? So that we get the whole prayer. We don't just get an average, right? On the way.
Maharaj, I had a
Yes.
question on that. Um, and so as we're doing this, we know, like, in general sense, think well, think positive about everyone. Sometimes this, whatever, negative thoughts about someone or whosoever comes by. Is it really helpful, and I battle with this, to think of it as like your ill thoughts or devil's thoughts? Like, like, I don't know. Or like, and sometimes it's like, in some places I was like, oh, the devil is whispering it. Oh, like Shaitan. Like, how do you make sense of it just in general?
I don't understand the question. I hate to have you say all that again, but can you phrase it a little
When
differently?
you're getting an ill thought about someone,
Uh,
let's just say anything about, you're not thinking well about someone,
oh,
or
uh-huh.
there's a judgment in any instance, or something happened or whatever. Um, what is the way to sort of, because I struggle with this, what is the way to sort of uh, push it away, or like let it go? Uh, like I, yeah, I'm just curious about how you think about that.
Yeah. Well, the first thing to know is thoughts like that are always ego sourced, right? So it's you always first recognize, oh, look, that's an egoic thought because it divides, right? It doesn't bring together, it divides. And so that's a sign of an egoistic thought, right?
Mm.
So I that's the first thing I recognize. And then I make sure then to know that I want all of me to come from the heart, right? I want its actions can be inspired or driven, right? If they're coming from love, wisdom, and being from the heart, they're inspired, and you'll never make a wrong move. If they're coming from the mind, from as a plan or a desire or a I think better or I think different, then that's going to be an enforced action, right? It's not inspired. You're making that action happen, so it's a forced thing from there. And when we have thoughts about others in an ill way, uh, just see it in the mind. You don't even have to respond to it. Just put your awareness on it, see it, because that thought is not natural to you. That thought is not native to you. That thought is coming from egoism, being in charge, and you can't fix that yourself because you're not a doer. But you see it. You place your awareness on it. That amount you have to become aware that, oh, look at that. And to see it in that clarity like that is enough. You become aware that that thought was there, and your nature will discard it in time, not immediately, but in time. And each time you run into it, again, notice it, you know. And if you want, pray to God, give it to God. That's usually what I do. I don't actually say anything about it. I just if it's a recurring one, I'm like, Ma, look, that just went through this head. Can you believe it? Look what I have to deal with. And then I move on, right? Just,
Yeah,
oh
I
my
have
God.
been practicing that and it really helps. The
Ah,
day you said it, whatever ill thought, whatever good thought, you give it to mother.
yes.
And it really helps. I mean, since last time when you told me, and I have been doing that, and I could sleep well, I could
Mm.
think well.
Yeah, that's the best way. I like to do that. And then I also like to see my pillow. Oh, I'm going to look like a little sappy kid here, but sometimes when I'm laying there at night, I imagine that the pillow is Holy Mother's lap. And then I'm laying on the floor with my head in mother's lap. I like to fall asleep with that thought. Very peaceful, very faith inducing. Yes, mind is everything. Mind is everything. Fill your heart with good things, with positive thinking. What you think, you become. You know. So if you go around being depressed, it's going to increase. If you go around with negative thoughts, they're going to increase. You go around with judgy thoughts, they're going to increase. But if you go around with an awareness of the presence, then anything you put your awareness on will turn right. You know, just have that awareness of presence all the time. And so she's talking here about this idea of walking around and praying to people. And sometimes in meditation, if someone comes to her mind, she'll just lift them up before God into the light, right? That's one of my favorite things. When people ask me to pray for them, I used to be very, very nervous about that. I was like, I didn't know what to pray. I was like, well, what do I know what to pray for you? I don't know what's good for you. I don't know what you need and what your psyche needs, what your karma needs, what your spiritual life needs. And so, that's what I remember Ramakrishna saying, the most powerful prayer is for God's will to be done. And so I thought, God's will be done, that's a phrase I've heard so much, it's sort of lost its meaning in its way for me. And so I decided what I would do instead is to lift people in light in front of Mother, and just ask for the best, give them the best. Right? If we start praying particular prayers, then we can be harming people. We may be praying for things that aren't helpful to them. Even if they asked us to pray for that particular thing. If you pray for that particular thing, don't pray for a particular outcome. Just give it to Mother. That's enough. Mother will do the right thing with it. And that way you don't have to suffer the karma if it doesn't work out, or if it doesn't work out the way you were expecting it. Yeah, like that. So she says, it's beautiful how she does it. Then I have the feeling of lifting them, lifting them, lifting them. And then the feeling of bringing God's light to them. And I try to envision them bathed in God's light. And finally, I do see them standing and reaching out their arms, bathed in golden light. At that point, I leave them in God's hands. So there's a beautiful prayer, and trust. The universe knows. In all the people I meet, though some may be governed by the self-centered nature and may not know their potential at all, I see that divine spark, and that's what I concentrate on. Wow, there's a key right there. Right? When we see people, that's what we concentrate on. That's what they mean when they say see God in everyone. It's see that divine spark, see the image of God that created them. Right? That's what I concentrate on. All people look beautiful to me. They look like shining lights to me. I always have the feeling of being thankful for these beautiful people who walk the earth with me. So I would say part of my prayer is a feeling of thankfulness, and of course a feeling of genuine love for all of God's children and all of God's creation. Prayer is a concentration of positive thoughts. That's a little bit about prayer. The ways of prayer. You can visualize God's light each day and send it to someone who needs help. Your divine nature must reach out and touch the divine nature of another. Within you is the light of the world. It must be shared with the world. Visualize a golden light within you and spread it out, first to those about you, your circle of friends and relatives, and then gradually to the world. Keep on visualizing God's golden light surrounding our earth. And if you have a problem, take the matter to God in prayer and visualize it in God's hands. Then leave it, knowing it is in the best possible hands, and turn your attention to other things. That's not the only prayer you can pray, but I have discovered that for some who were in very great trouble, this prayer of visualization was helpful to them. I have heard results later, so I do a little of this. There is also a constant prayer of thankfulness. I am constantly thankful. The world is so beautiful. I am thankful. I have endless energy. I am thankful. I am plugged into the source of universal supply. I am thankful. I'm plugged into the source of universal truth. I'm thankful. I have this constant feeling of thankfulness, which is a prayer. When you are learning, it's true, it may be valuable to take special times, even to use special forms. I can see that. Several times people have written to me and said, Peace, will you pray with me at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 9 o'clock in the evening, which is such and such a time, daylight saving time? I write and tell them, you don't have to figure all that out for me. Plug in at any time and you will be praying with me, and I will be praying with you, because I pray without ceasing. That's cool. That is lovely. I find that, as I'm reading this book, there's times where you just kind of want to stop and just sit with the beauty of this woman's life. Just the preciousness of her relationship with the world and with God and with herself. She's so matter of fact, it's just an old farming woman. Praying without ceasing is not ritualized, nor are there even words. It is a constant state of awareness of oneness with God. Oh my God, I didn't think she was going to go there. That is so cool. Wow. Praying without ceasing is not ritualized, nor are there even words. It is a constant state of awareness of the oneness with God. It is a sincere seeking for a good thing, and it is a concentration on the thing sought with faith that it is obtainable. All right prayer has good effect, but if you give your whole life to the prayer, you multiply its power. No one really knows the full power of prayer. Of course, there is a relationship between prayer and action. Receptive prayer results in inner receiving, which motivates to the right action. Wow, that's some good pointers right there. Right? Praying without ceasing is not ritualized, nor are there even words. It is a constant state of awareness and oneness with God. It is a sincere seeking for a good thing. It is a concentration on the thing sought, with faith that it is obtainable. All right prayer has good effect, but if you give your whole life to that prayer, you multiply its power. No one really knows the full power of prayer. Of course, there is a relationship between prayer and action. Receptive prayer results in an inner receiving, which motivates to right action. So this receptive prayer results in inner receiving. We're open to it inside, right? That increases love. And love is the motivating thing she's talking about here, which motivates to right action. That is what happens if you're following what she says, that if you're in a constant state of awareness of oneness, of state of awareness of oneness with God, right? If you have that constant set, then the prayers coming from you will always have their good effect. They will always go in the right direction, because they cannot be egoistic prayers or egotistic prayers if you are in the awareness of the presence. It's just not compatible. Just not compatible to be selfish while in the presence, or to not be loving while in the awareness of presence. Because the awareness of presence, that presence is the love that you are. So you're even though you may be thinking you're being aware of God, you're being aware of your own divine nature as well. Right? Let me tell you a story about an answer to prayer. I was picked up late one night by a young policeman as I was walking along a lonely highway. I believe he was thinking in terms of protective custody. He said to me, "Why, nobody in this town would walk out along this highway at this time of night." I said to him, "Well, you see, I walk completely without fear. Therefore, I'm not attracting things which are not good. It says that which I feared came upon me." All right? "But I fear nothing and expect only good." He took me in anyhow, and I found myself in a cell. The floor was littered with old newspapers and cigarette butts and every old thing. The accommodations consisted of a single mattress on the floor and four ragged blankets. There were two women attempting to sleep together on that single mattress. They told me they'd been there. There had been 8 women in that cell the night before with those accommodations. There was a rather nice feeling among the prisoners in general. They said to me, "You'll need to have 2 blankets because you'll be sleeping on the floor." I took a newspaper and cleared a place on the floor, and then put one blanket down and the other blanket over me, and slept comfortably enough. It wasn't the first time I had slept on a cement floor, nor the last. If you're relaxed, you can sleep anywhere. When I woke up in the morning, I saw this man staring through the bars. I said to him, "What time does court convene?" He said, "I don't know." I said, "Well, aren't you a policeman?" "No," he said, "I just look like it. I just like to look at girls." It was one of those town sports. Anyone could come right off the street and see what they had here, who they had here today. Let's go, let's go look at the girls. One of the women was middle-aged and was being held for being drunk and disorderly. It was her 7th offense. She told me, so it wasn't so hard on her. But the other one was an 18-year-old girl. She felt her entire life was ruined because of this experience. I said, "It's my second time, and I certainly don't think my life is ruined." I got her all cheered up, and we talked about what she'd do when she got out. She was to get out that day, or the next day. Then they changed the guards. I never saw a matron. The new guard saw me and said, "What are you doing in there?" "I saw your picture in the newspaper. I heard you over the air." Then they just let me go. But before I left, I got a broom from the man who cleaned up around there and gave it to the girls so they could sweep out the cell. I also gave them a comb for their hair because it was all matted. They had been there about a week without a comb. What I really wanted to tell you is that the 18-year-old girl was a deeply religious person. She had been desperately praying for help. I believe that I was picked up off the highway that night and set behind prison bars in order to answer her prayers. What a beautiful assumption. I mean, the beauty of that is you can see how she just lives her life to serve. So she assumes everything is conjuring for her service, you know, to take her to talk to people she needs to talk to see the people she needs to see, to say the things she needs to say. That's why she's constantly aware of the presence, because she knows that it's taking her everywhere she needs to go. And she's expecting goodness in every experience that she's being given. And she's looking to serve in everyone that she's around. It's just just beautiful. The most important part of prayer is what we feel, not what we say. We spend a great deal of time telling God what we think should be done, and not enough time waiting in the stillness for God to tell us what to do. Right? God, that's very memorable. That was my first lesson from Mother in Colorado. Right? I was praying about what should we do? Why did you bring me here? What should happen here? Right? And then the next day after I had asked all those questions, I realized I don't know how to hear her. How is she going to tell me what I'm supposed to be doing? How is this supposed to happen? And so I went to the second day, I went to her prayer to her, and with that prayer, it was like, I just realized, Ma, I know how to ask questions. I've been doing that my whole life. I said, but it occurs to me now for the first time, I'm directly waiting for you because I don't know what to do. So I don't have all options. I always had options and I just always took the options before. There's no options now. This is your project. I'm available to you. And it was the third day that I was reading the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, and I read that statement where Ramakrishna says, in pure mind arises the voice, that which arises in pure mind or silent mind is the voice of the divine. Right? So when you're completely empty and just stand there before God, what you will hear is the voice of the beloved. Right? But I also found it doesn't come as a voice. It doesn't come, well, I think it can. I'm not going to limit God. But the way that it really happened for me was coming in knowings. You just suddenly knew what to do. You didn't have to be told. And the feeling was that you always knew what you were supposed to be doing, that somehow you had just forgotten for a moment. And so I always thought that that's how you hear the voice of God. It sounds so intimately uh, uh, familiar to you that it feels like your own thought. It feels like a thought you've always had. It's intimate to you. Now, beside God's laws, which are the same for all of us, there is also God's guidance, and that is unique for every human soul. If you don't know what God's guidance for your life is, you might try seeking in receptive silence. I used to walk receptive and silent amidst the beauties of nature. Wonderful insights would come to me, which I then put into practice in my life. Ah, yes, that's when the inner guru is waking up. When you can start hearing the teachings like that and the knowings, because you walk in an inner silence. Right? You might prefer listening to beautiful, uplifting music or reading a few beautiful words and pondering on them. To me, the beauties of nature were always the most inspiring. And so actually, that was my time alone with God. It didn't last more than an hour, if that, and I got so much from it. Now, the young folks talk to me today about things like breathing exercises and meditation techniques, which in some cultures are definitely religious practices. But I say, look what I got from my time alone with God, from the beauty around me, my inspiration, from the silent receptiveness, my meditation, and from my walking, not only my exercise, but my breathing. 4 things at once. I believe in making very good use of my time. And you can't be too pushy when you're doing 4 things at once. Foolish people have sometimes used very strenuous breathing exercises or meditation techniques that tore them apart and pushed them into an undesirable state instead of into a spiritual state. Yes, that was long before psychedelic drugs. I always think of the bud of a flower. If you give it proper conditions, it will open into a beautiful flower. But if you're impatient and try to tear the petals open, you will permanently injure the flower for the earth life. The flower can be equated with the earthly human life. Give the spiritual grown up the proper growing conditions, and it will open up into a thing of beauty. Right? So this is that non-striving. Right? We don't sit down with a type A personality to meditate. Right? Shut up, mind. Shut up. I get so frustrated. Why don't you just shut up? Right? Type A meditation doesn't work. right? So meditation is a relaxation. It's a letting go. It's a surrendering into truth, a surrendering into God, a surrendering into love, and an open acceptance to the work that Mother's doing at that very same moment, and a constant flow of permission for her to go deeper, for her to take whatever is arising in you, right? Your awareness becomes her awareness, and you sit there together, right? Watching the mind, watching the activity of the heart, and maybe saying nothing. Nothing needs to be said. That itself is a healing energy, is a fixing force, right? A karma remover. Okay, let's see. So give the spiritual growing up the proper growing conditions, and it will open into a thing of beauty. When you feel the need of a spiritual lift, try getting to bed early and getting up early to have a quiet time at dawn. Then carry the serene, in tune feeling that comes to you into your day, no matter what you may be doing. For those of you seeking the spiritual life, I recommend these 4 daily practices. 1. Spend time alone each day in a receptive silence. When angry or afflicted with a negative emotion, take time to be alone with God. Do not talk with people who are angry. They are irrational and cannot be reasoned with. If you or they are angry, it is best to leave and pray. Visualize God's light each day and send it to someone who needs help. Exercise the body. It is the temple of the soul. So those are the practices every day. I like that. Spend time sitting alone in receptive silence, which is exactly what surrendering into the divine is. It's opening up and being receptive to the work of God in you, right? And just instead of complaining about the distractions or trying to control the noise or trying to fix the wrongs, instead of doing all that, just let it express itself and look at Mother and hand it to her. Your problem. Your problem. You're the mother. I don't have to change my own diaper, you told me. Hopefully that doesn't mean I have to sit in a dirty diaper. Right. And so you just sit there constantly aware. So that's the first one. And then when you're angry, don't try and fix your problem when you're angry. And don't try and settle the dispute with an angry person, right? Go away, pray, come back to your center. This is one of the things I always appreciated about my father that he told me. You know, growing up, whenever I got in trouble, the the punishment would always come a half an hour later. He would always tell me, you know, if he caught me doing something wrong, he'd say, come up to my room, come up to my room in a half an hour. And I'd go up in his room and he'd have a little chair sitting down in front of him and he'd be sitting there on a little stool himself and he'd have a belt in his hand folded over. And he would say, sit down, and I would sit down and he says, now tell me, do you know why you're going to get a spanking? And if I said no, he would explain it to me. And if I said yes, he would correct me if I was wrong or say, yes, that's right. And then I'd have to get up and I'd have to, if it was a really bad one, I'd have to undo my belt. You know? If it wasn't a really bad one, then I would have to stand up and he would always say those cliche words, this hurts me more than it's going to hurt you. And he would give me my lashing, you know, and I'd go downstairs. And I asked him, you know, when I got older in college, I asked him, I was like, why did you, that was such a torture to me that you made me wait a half an hour for my spanking. Did you do it like that for that reason, to make it a worse punishment? And he was shocked. He's like, oh my goodness, no. He said, I did it that way because I always swore to myself that I would never hit my children in anger, you know? And I thought, wow, thank you.
Hitting in not angry, that's a deliberately preparing to hit, right?
Yes, yes, to correct me, to correct me. It wasn't just punishment for punishment's sake. It was a deterrent that I wouldn't do that thing again. One of them was creating a gas furnace in the sandbox. That was not a helpful thing. So I got spanked for that. Yeah. Anyway, but so that's her second thing. Don't deal with anger while you're angry. It's not going to work. Give you some time to calm down and then come back. Right? So when angry, visualize God's light each day and send it to someone who needs help. Exercise the body. It is the temple of God. So those 4 things, a very nice set of 4 things you can play with. Any of those, move them in with your practice or what your guru's got you going on. If you want to adopt any of them. On fasting. Oh, it's 5:31. All right, let's stop there because that's a good place to start tomorrow.